All right, if you remember, I asked you to get into Visual Studio, and we're going to start up a new project. We'll do that in a minute. First thing I want to say is I stole this project. All right, stole, gleaned, whatever you want to say. I went out and was looking at some stuff online. I wanted to go and make changes to it. Didn't have the time. No excuse. I just didn't. So this is, to show you quickly, this is what we're going to build. You've all got a hard copy of it. You don't have to turn it in. But it's more or less, it's kind of a memory game. So if you look here, click here, and notice that when I pick two that match, they stay up on the screen. So eventually, because I'm not that good at it, and I'm getting old and don't have a memory anymore, so eventually the game will end. And when you're done, you're told you won. Okay? You can see there are many ways this game could be improved. For instance, we could set it up so you could have 2 players. You know, that would make sense. There was a game back in the, probably the 60s or the 70s. And, you know, how they do that with a lot of games, they bring them back. So it's been back a few times. But it was called Concentration. And it kind of looked like this. But what happened is every time you had a match, so for instance, when I came here, if I would have matched these 2 things right there, there would have been a puzzle behind it. And, you know, it would, with pictures and stuff, and you would have had to have guessed the puzzle. All right, that kind of thing. Back in that day, you didn't have this stuff. You had prizes. So, you know, it might be a microwave oven or a trip someplace or whatever. That's what this is based off of. Okay? We're going to create this in just a few minutes. I'd like to wait until around 8:30 because that's when the person who's our possible shadow attack should be here. All right? So we'll wait until that time. I will say it again. Again, this is not my work. I don't claim that it's my work. I made very few changes to it, but that's where it is. It's a 36-minute long presentation, and I broke it up so that we're going to be able to do a bunch of the stuff that I want to show you in class today. All right? Now, the other thing, and I'd like all of you please to go out here and look at this, is I'd like you to go to this URL right here that you see on the screen. It's under YouTube. Probably can just get to YouTube and type in using Git with Visual Studio. You might be able to find it too. I don't know. What? Okay. Now, if you go out to this one right here, it is 9 minutes and 10 seconds long. That's how long this particular video is. All right? We're actually going to watch that video, but not all of it. It's a little bit confusing. Part of the video talks about how you can use Git with Visual Studio. Git is just one version control system. All right? Microsoft has their own version control system. So part of it talks about that. We'll watch the whole thing, not to confuse you, but just so you can see it all in action. So that's the first one. If you've got that up, then please open up yet another browser window and go to here. Now this presentation right here, I'm going to give you time today to look at it. All right, if you don't have headphones, I'd rather have you have the sound down real low. This is 1 hour and 10 minutes long. I wouldn't expect you to sit down and be able to stomach that at one particular meeting, so to speak, or one sit down. But that said, the guy who presents it, he really knows his stuff. And this is Git fundamentals, but he shows you Git from the command line. All right, did you hear me? He shows you Git from the command line. That's about the first 20 or 25 minutes of the video. After he shows you Git from the command line, the next thing that he does is he shows you Git using Visual Studio. So we're going to do some of that stuff today. Everybody hear me? All right. Tomorrow, we're going to do 3 things. I don't know how long this is all going to take. I have no idea. But what we're going to do is first, we're going to go over chapter 3 of that thing where I went over the first 2 chapters yesterday. That's on branching. So we're going to at least talk about that. I don't know how much time we'll spend on it. Then we'll go over chapter 6, which is on GitHub. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take this project that we're building today and attempt to move it up to GitHub. All right? GitHub, again, is basically, for lack of better words, look at it this way. That GitHub is like a server. So you know how you move your stuff up to iwt.rankin.edu? You're going to be doing a similar thing here. But you won't have to use FileZilla to do it. All right? So we'll have a copy both here and we'll have a copy online, up out on a server someplace. Hopefully that makes sense. So that's 2 of the 3 things that we're going to do tomorrow. All right? When we get done with that, like I said, we're going to, then my hope is we're going to go back and I want to basically get done with the database stuff. So I want to explain to you what I plan on doing next week in class. And next week is the week of the 16th. So we got 16, 23, 30. Okay, we've got 3 weeks, 3 full weeks after this week. Then you have 3 days. Those 3 days, as I mentioned, are going to be all lab. Those are going to be time for you to work on your portfolios. All right, now we've got one person in here who has not worked on portfolios before. I have to send Evan Gudmested an email today to get you a login on the Rankins server. Then I'm going to go back and review a little bit what we did for the portfolios. You already have portfolios out there. What you're going to find is every semester they're graded a little harder. In other words, if you did yours last time, even though I told you to put a picture of yourself out there, and let's say you didn't put a picture out there, I probably didn't take off. Now I'm going to. All right, so we're going to go over everything that you're supposed to be doing for your portfolio. And again, you can do it in straight HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. You can do it in Bootstrap. You can do it in Mobirise. We'll talk about all of those. Then starting next week, we're going to go and we're going to build a C# application as a class. All right, my hope is everybody will be here every day. I'll tape it, but still we're going to create it as a class. When we get all done, you're going to have to turn in what you have. And I'm trying to look at it as kind of like it's a free 50 points, because if you get it done and it works and you turn it in, boom, you get all the points for it. And that'll be due like the Monday that we get done. Okay, so again, just one more time to recap. Tomorrow, we're going to go through that Git book, chapter 3, that Git book, chapter 6, and we're going to talk a little bit more about database. So that'll be Thursday. Friday, not sure what we'll do, okay, yet. But next week, so the week of the 16th, the week of the 23rd, the week of the 30th, this will be the C# database project. And that last week, which is the 7th, 8th, and 9th, that'll be portfolio. When you walk out of here, this isn't a threat or anything, I'm just telling you. When you walk out of here on the 9th, and what is that? Today is the 11th, so that's like 4 weeks from today. Okay, so when you walk out of here on the 9th, all work is due. I don't want it where you're sending me stuff that night. No, I don't want to do that. All right, I want your stuff. I literally want to have your final grades in by the time I leave. All right, that day. And my other class, I'm telling them the same thing, but their stuff is due at 4:30 that day. So your portfolio will actually be due, and any other work that you might want to turn in. If you're behind on anything, I would like to at least give you some credit for it. All right. And I think what I'm going to do, I did this for the other class, and I'm going to do it for you, you might already have it, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to print out a grade sheet for each one of you. And what that grade sheet will have on it is on the front, it'll have your name and your current grade, and you turn it over, and it'll have every assignment you've had and the grades you've gotten on it. Does that make sense? Then you can go back and look and see if there's anything that you have missing. Then it's up to you to see whether or not, if you have something missing, if you want to turn it in or not. All right? And if you don't, that's fine. And if you do, I will give you at least partial credit. All right? Does all that make sense? So again, what I asked you to do, we're going to build this memory game in just a minute. All right? But I gave you this first. And this is a 9-minute presentation. We're going to watch it in just a bit when we get done using Git with Visual Studio. All right? That's out on YouTube. What I've asked is when you get time, and I know it. When you say, geez, time, I never have time. I get it. All right? But this other presentation here, notice I've watched the first 37 minutes of it. It's good. All right? And it's a guy from Microsoft. I believe at least it is. And when you look over here, I don't expect you to take the time to watch all these, but notice this. Here's another one, Visual Studio, using Git and GitHub. Here's this guy, Git tutorial for beginners. There's a lot of really good information out there. All right? I will tell you, I mentioned this I think yesterday, but I'm saying it again. When you go in to start interviewing for jobs, you will probably be asked at one, more, or all of the jobs, what do you know about version control, Jesse? All right, and if he can say, well, I've got a GitHub account, I've got stuff that's posted out there, and I've used it for my projects, that sounds good. All right, starting in the fall class with the AWD1100 class, the one that 6 of you in here took last fall, they're going to be introduced to Git in the first semester. They're going to get a GitHub account in the first semester. So, Devin, you're going to be ahead of the game, and maybe you'll be able to help some of the other people in fall. All right? Okay. So, again, last time, I didn't make this. This particular memory game comes from right there. So if you decide that either you can't get it to work, or you think, well, geez, I don't know if he knows what he's talking about, or whatever, all right, you can always go back and look at that if you're so inclined. All right, so that said, let me get rid of this stuff. And I've got a copy already. You have a working copy right there. We're going to create that working copy right now as a class. All right? And again, they always tell me when we get a shadow attack, they're supposed to come in at 8:30. It's just about 8:30. All right? So I'm hoping that this person, she or he, comes in very soon, if they're coming in. All right? But you all know how to do this now. We've done this before. So if you haven't done so again, please start up Visual Studio. I do want to mention that for those of you who will be taking the AWD1100 class in fall, the 3rd semester class, all right, there is a new version of Visual Studio out. This is Visual Studio 2015 that we've been using. There is a Visual Studio 2017. That said, don't uninstall 15 and install 17. The book that we're using for fall assumes you're using 15. Did you hear that? So you're already set for that. All right. Will if you decide, well, I want to use 17, will it work? I don't know. I really have no idea. All right. I should show you real quick. Let's see if I can find that. This is way too big, but this is the book that we'll be using for fall for the next class. It's called ASP.NET MVC with Entity Framework and CSS. According to this, it's not expensive. It's $45, and What they do throughout this book, I'm not going to go over any of that with you, but just so you see it, they build a project. The whole book is a big project that you build and you throw out on the web. And what they build literally is a baby store, kind of like a Babies R Us type of thing. You know, so they sell clothes and toys and all sorts of stuff. They'll give you all that you need as far as the images, etc., and we'll build that as a class. While we are building that as a class, I'm going to have you create your own website. So you're going to be doing something similar to this, but it should be something that you're interested in. All right, I always go back to this and don't mean to pick on it, but for example, let's just say that Tony wants Tony's New England Patriots store. He could build that type of thing. All right, that's what we'll be working on. And then for you, just so you know, you are not going to be using the same books that they used last fall. We're going to be using 2 Muroc books. One of them is, well, it's the 3rd edition because that one wasn't out yet. So it looks just like this, but it says 3rd edition. So Muroc's HTML and CSS. Let's just go to view all here. So you'll be going and using this. Now, when you notice 19 chapters, 682 pages, that's half the class. So we don't go over every chapter in detail. There's just not enough time. All right. There's also another Muroc book that's called Muroc's JavaScript and jQuery. Notice again, 132 pages. Both books, I think you can buy them together. They're somewhere around, for the two of them, 100 to 110 bucks, something like that. But those will be the two books that you'll use. All right. All right, enough. You know, we waited. If the person comes in, fine. If they don't come in, that's also fine. All right. So we've got a new version of Visual Studio. So you're probably like right here. All right. Don't worry about this Team Explorer. You'll get to that in just a bit, so don't worry about that. All right. In fact, I should be able to even close it there. All right. So what I'd like us to do is to come in and do File, New, Project. You've done this before. It's nothing new. It's going to be a Windows Form application. And again, you do not have to turn this in. So where you save it, what you call it, etc., is up to you. If we're working on this and you have any kind of problem, you have a copy of the code in front of you. What I'm going to ask for today is that you try not to jump ahead. All right? All right. So I'm just going to call mine. I don't think I have something called Memory Game. I think I called the first copy of it that I created Memory. And I'm just going to take mine. I'm going to create it right on the desktop. All right? Again, what you do is up to you. I think I mentioned this the other day, but look up on the screen here. Do not create projects like this and put blank spaces in here. You're just asking for trouble. It may even work, but I've had it happen before. You know, years ago, I don't want to bore you, but I just want to tell you this quick. Remember that Joe's Auto that we did? Remember that? I assigned that because it was from a book I used to use. And I told students, they said, what should we call it? Can we call it Joe's Auto? I said, yeah, fine. I thought they'd call it Joe's Auto, because that's how we talked about stuff in class. Well, what several of them did was they called it this. And everything was hunky-dory. Until one day when they brought it up, and now it didn't understand that apostrophe, and the program locked, and they couldn't do anything with it. They couldn't bring their files up. They couldn't do anything. So they were like, well, geez, what do we do? I said, you start all over again. Well, that isn't fair. Of course, then it was my fault, because even though I showed them how to name it, and they didn't do it that way, it was still my fault. All right. So again, no spaces, no special characters. All right, so again, I called my Memory Game with a big M, with a big G, and I ran the two together, and I'm going to click OK. We're going to do this very deliberately. Oh, crap. You know what? I just screwed up. So let me exit. If you just did yours, close it. I'm sorry. because I want to make sure that there's something we probably didn't do. All right. This is my working copy of it, so, and I apologize for that. All right, again, we're going to do a file, new, project. The key thing here is I didn't tell you to check that. You should check create directory. For the first time, we're going to click create new Git repository. All right? That's as though this line right here is as though we just did a git init. You now know what a git init is. All right? I apologize for not saying that, so I'm just going to call mine memory game 2. All right? But make sure the create directory for solution and the create new Git repository are both selected. Now, just so you know, I believe that by default, from now on, anytime you create a project in here, that'll be checked. So if you don't want to use Git, you should uncheck that. Does that make sense? It says what? Then check that one. How many of yours say create new Git repository? Yours says add to source control? Then check that one. Should be doing the same thing. Why yours would say that, mine say something else, I don't know. We're both running the same software, so I don't know. But we're going to check right now. And if for some reason this doesn't work, then I'm hosed. Not you, but I'm hosed. So I just created this memory 2. It's here someplace. No, cancel. Cancel. And what you should notice in here is I've got a Git folder. All right? And look at yours. So if you saved it to the desktop, double click on the folder and make sure you've got a .git folder in there. See Evan shaking his head that he does. All right? How many of you don't have a Git folder in there? All right? How many of you do have a Git folder in there? Well, this isn't like working out real swimmingly, is it? All right. What's that? Let's do this. I'm going to take this. That's memory. That's the one that I built earlier. All right. And this one is memory game 2. I'm going to close both of them. I've got everything closed now. All right. So there's memory. That's what I want. That's memory game 2. I don't want that. That's that memory game. I don't want that. I'm just going to clean this up. So with junk in here I don't need, I'm going to throw it out. All right. All right. Let's all try it again. So just stop Visual Studio. Anything that you've done today, unless you've got that Git folder, if yours didn't work, then just throw everything you've done so far away. All right. How many people got a Git folder other than Evan? Anybody? What? Okay, so we're going to see if we can get one now. All right. So start up Visual Studio. Again, we're going to do a file, new, project. We want to make sure it's Windows Web Form. And you said yours here says add to source control or something like that? Now it says create new Git. All right. So maybe we had to check it once. I don't know. Mine just came up right away and it said create new Git repository. All right. Do you ever have that situation where your car is making a weird noise and you take it into the mechanic and of course it does everything except make that weird noise? And you sit there and you try to describe to the mechanic the noise your car's making and the mechanic just starts kind of laughing at you? Well, I mean, it's the same kind of thing. If you said to me, why does it say now create new Git repository before it says, I have no idea. Mine never said that. It always said create new Git repository. How many of you now have create new Git repository? You two do. You do. Do you?
I think I had to restart my laptop.
Okay, then go ahead and restart it. Ryan, do you have it?
Yeah.
Okay. Andrew, do you have it?
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to wait while he restarts his laptop. Again, I'm not in any hurry here. And just so you know, I mean, I literally went online and found this memory game. I'm not saying, hey, well, Jeff, yeah, thanks, Jeff. No, but I figured you probably wouldn't want to be doing another iteration of that payroll program. So I thought we could do something that was, for lack of better words, sort of fun. Morning.
All right.
Morning.
Scott, this is Chase.
Hi, Chase. Jeff Scott. Yeah, you can just sit right there. I've got some stuff set up for you already. So, Chase, just so you're aware of it, what this class is a C# programming class. All right. These are students, the majority of whom are in their second semester. All right. And we've got one or two that are in their first semester. But what we did in the first part of this class, so for about the first 8 or 9 weeks, what we did in this class was they learned C#. They learned the language. Then we went in and worked on databases for about 4 weeks. Now we're going to come back and try to merge the two together. But while we're doing that, kind of like in between those two, we're also learning about Git. I don't know if you know what Git is or not. It's what's called a source control or version management system. It allows you to save whatever it is you're working on in stages. And you save it, and then you can always revert back to an earlier stage if you want to. So yesterday we started talking about Git, and we're going to go back and we're going to build a C# project right now, and that C# project is going to use Git. So they know how to do that. Then what we're going to do, probably not until tomorrow, but what we're going to do is we're going to go out to something that you may have heard of this or may not have. It's called github.com. And what GitHub is it allows you to take all these things you've saved and put them out to a server so they're available to anybody with an internet connection. So that's what we're going to be doing. All right. Did it start?
Yeah, it's loading.
Okay. We've had a few machine problems here this morning. So, all right, I'm just going to call mine because I know I don't have one that's called My Memory Game. Really doesn't matter in the end what you call yours. All right, show you, Chase, very quickly what we're going to be doing here. And I told them the way that they learned C# is they had a textbook, but as a class we built a payroll system, and we kept adding to it and adding to it. So when we would go through something in class, then we would add that to our payroll system. All right, and then they ended up with having assignments, etc. on this. But let's see if I can open this up. So what we're going to end up doing here is a very simple game like this. So what we do is when you match different things, and you can see how bad I am at it, but as you match different things, they stay up on the screen. All right, and then when you get all done, it just comes up with a message saying you won. This is something I literally grabbed off the internet, and it just so that I can show them how to use Git and the like. All right. Okay. Now is it up?
Yeah, I'm starting to do that.
So other than Devin here, everyone else, you've all got that option that says create new Git repository, correct? Everyone else does. And as I mentioned, that is the equivalent of what we did in class yesterday when we were using git bash and we were at the command line. Remember that after we set up our name and our email, the next thing that we did was we did a git init. What that git init did, if you remember, is that added that .git directory to our project. All right, and that's the same thing we're doing right here. So I called mine my memory game. Again, you can call it whatever you would like. And save it where you normally save your stuff. All right, so I'm going to click OK. It's going to start building the project for me. Make sure, again, that's checked where it says both those things on the side are checked. All right. So again, when you look here, here's my memory game right here. So that's the one I just created. And you see I've got my .git in there. Questions on that? Does that make sense? All right. Now, what's going to happen as we go through this, because you probably didn't even notice this, but what's going to happen as we start to go through and put stuff in here is this is going to look a little different than it has in the past. All right? When we come in here and we start making changes in this stuff, you're going to see check marks by it. And what that means is you've made changes. And it's going to ask, do you want to commit those changes? So the stuff that we looked at yesterday. All right, so you're going to see that stuff. All right, so that, yes. Still doesn't. Well, you can try. Let's see what it's got. Did you say add Git? Are you sure it was checked? All right, stop it and start up one more. Try to start up another project. Just exit out there. You can just do an exit. Oh, that's fine. That's fine. Okay, start up a new project. Now, what it could be, find the memory Git folder or whatever one we just created. Believe it or not, it might be there. What you should do is overview that and open up a new window. Say, type in there how to show hidden files. Grab one. I don't know what you wrote, 7 or 10. So right start button, select control panel. Just type control panel and you'll get it right. Yeah, you can play. Appearances and personalization. Just go up here. So drag your desktop itself. Right mouse click on there. That should be personalization. Personalize that at the bottom. Choose it. I'll bring up your browser window again. Do that. Do that. Click. Yeah. Or we just put it whole thing in. Do what? All right. That's what I'm thinking. Well, one way we may be able to check, go back into Visual Studio. And click View, AC, with the Explorer. And click Change. I think it actually is done. We're going to go with a premise that it is. If nothing else, we'll go back and we'll add it afterward. All right. So if any of you, for whatever reason, are having problems with this, we'll try to see if we can work through them a little bit later. All right. So again, we're going to do this, just very, very straightforward, hopefully. All right. You know this, that one of the first things we do is we rename our controls. What you're going to find today is we're not going to rename every control. You'll see why in just a bit. But on here, it's a memory game. I'm just going to change the name of my form from Form 1 to Form Memory Game. Again, you're not turning this in, but it's still considered good practice to do that. We could put some text there. I don't really care about that. All right, that's not a real big thing. The first thing we're going to do, though, is you may or may not have noticed this before, but when you go in the form here and you go and you arrow your way down quite a bit, it's got the size of the form. And as you can see when you look right here, the form currently is 300 by 300. Everybody see that? We want ours to be 550 by 550. So we're literally just going to get rid of that 300, 300, type in 550, 550, and hit enter. And what you'll notice when we do that is the form gets bigger. It almost doubles in size. All right? Now, again, mine doesn't show everything because of the resolution with this monitor. But don't worry about that. Yours, it'll work fine as we get going through this. All right? So that's the first thing that we want to do. We're going to actually use a couple new tools in here that we've never used before. All right? So what I'd like you to do is to bring up your toolbox. Hopefully you remember this. It hasn't been that long. It's not showing. You do a view and you go down to toolbox, which is just a little bit more than halfway down. All right, but I want that to be showing. You've got your choice. You can pin that to your desktop by clicking the pin button or not. But I want you to go down and find, it's quite a ways down here, I want you to find Table Layout Panel. We have not used this before, but I want you to find a Table Layout Panel. Once you find it, either double click on it or just left mouse click and drag it and let go of it. It should look like that when you get done. All right? The first thing that we want to do, and one of the reasons I chose this project was it gives me a chance to go back and talk about some things that we may have glossed over earlier. All right? So this right now, this is called Table Layout Panel 1, and that's okay, but that's kind of a lot to type. So I just changed mine to TLP. I know that's not a good name. I really probably shouldn't have done that. But it makes it easier because we use that quite a bit in our code. TLP for Table Layout Panel. Okay? So I just called it that. All right. Now, the next thing that we want to do is we want to come in and we want to start working with this. We want this thing to take up the entire screen. Did you all hear me? We want this to take up the entire screen. Now, I could drag and just make it bigger. That's a pain. All right. Plus, when you resize your screen, it's not going to keep up. So what we want to do is we want to, with this highlighted, this TLP, we want to go down into our properties window and we want to find dock. Right now it looks at, it's set to none. All right. I want you to click that down arrow after none and choose this big thing in the middle. Pretty obvious what we just did. We told it to dock and take up the entire screen. Now, even if we happen to resize our screen, what will happen is that thing that we have in there will end up being as big as the screen size. It'll automatically resize itself. All right? So that's the first thing that we wanted to do. The next thing we want to do, we want to change the color of this because it's ugly. All right. And in the past, what we've always done is we'll click on this. We go over to back color. We click here, and we choose custom, and we could do that. But we're not going to do it that way. All right. Instead of choosing custom, we're going to choose web. Just so you see there's other colors in here. These are web-friendly colors. Everybody hear that? So the idea is these colors should exist. These colors here should exist on any browser. They should be natural colors. And we're going to go down almost to the bottom. And we're looking for cornflower blue. So we're seeing it right here. So it's about 2/3, 3/4 of the way down. Find cornflower blue. All right. So I'm going to click on that. Pretty obvious again what just happened. All right. We just changed the background color. All right. Now, you may or may not remember, but when I showed you the working copy, it looks like this. So in other words, it's a 4x4 grid, correct? Right now, we've got a 2x2 grid. It's not what we want. So we're going to change that. We'll make one more change before we change that. All right, and that is, right now, it's going to be kind of hard when we run this to see where these things begin and end. All right, on this. So what we want to do is we want to go down to one more property in here, and that property is cell border style. I want you to set your cell border style, which is set to none, set it to inset. See the screen? Everybody, please look at the screen. Watch what happens to these dashed lines here when I set it to inset. Is that pretty obvious? But now there's a clear delineation where each one of these cells is going to begin and end. That's why we did that. All right? So, next thing that we want to do, if you look up here, does anybody remember? Here's a little quiz for you. This arrow that's right here, see that arrow? I want us to click that. Does anybody remember what that arrow is called? It's called a smart tag. That's literally Microsoft's term for it. So I wanted you to click that arrow, not the arrow here, because that's attempting to close it, but the arrow, the little thing that's right there. If you put your mouse over it and you click, it should look like this. All right, what we want to do is add 2 columns and 2 rows. Now, before you do anything, we could just click add column, twice or several times, except we don't want to do that. That's too much work. Because then we'd have to go in, and anyway, I want you to go down to where it says edit rows and columns, right there, and choose that. And if it looks like this, that's a good thing. All right, we're going to manually go in and add 2 rows, and then manually go in and add 2 columns. All right, so how do we do that? Well, if you look over here, right now we've got 2 columns, column 1 and column 2, and they're each taking up 50%. We're going to click the add button down here twice. So now we've got 4 columns. I just added column 3, but the problem is right now, these 2 are still taking up 50%. So it's going to look real funky if right now we were to run the program. So we want to click here where it says column 1, and we want to change this, the percentage, from 50% to 25%. Then we want to go to column 2 and set it from 50% to 25%. Those 2 are now fixed. Now, right now, columns 3 and 4 are both set to absolute. We don't want that. So please look on the screen here. Change it from absolute to percent and make it 25%. Finally, do the same thing for the last one. So when you get done, that's what these should look like. So we will now have 4 columns. All right. Now, what I want you to do, does everybody have that? Everybody's got that? What I want you to do then is to click this down arrow and change, and so instead of saying columns, it now says rows. Choose the one that says rows. All right? But before you do that, notice you don't have to do this, but I want you to look at the screen, please. All right? I want you to see what I just did here. When I click OK, See what we did? We now have a 2x4. We want a 4x4, so we're almost there. So I'm going to go back to my smart tag again. I'm going to go over to rows, and I'm going to do the same thing I just did. In other words, I'm going to click add twice to add 2 more rows. I'm going to change each one of these so they're a percent, and they're set to 25%. All right, and if you've got all that and you click OK, now the grid's looking the way we want it to look. Does all that make sense? So to kind of review, we went in, started up a new project, made sure that Git was selected. All right, we brought in a table layout panel. We opened up the properties window. We set it to dock so that it took up the entire screen or the entire form. We went back in, we changed the color. All right, so we changed the color to a web color, cornflower blue. We set the border style to inset. Then we went in with a smart tag and we added rows and we added columns. All right. Is everybody caught up? All right. Now I want to show you something. You don't have to do this. My guess is that everyone in this room, this is not a class in Microsoft Word, but that everybody in this class has used Word at some time or another. All right. So if I come in here and I, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, etc. You know what that is. All right. But what you may or may not know, this is the font type. I'm going to come down here in the font type, and I'm going to go right down to the bottom, and I'm going to find Webdings. All right. Why? You're going to see why in a second. I'm going to type in A, just like I did above. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K. See the difference? It's like Wingdings. You might have worked with Wingdings fonts already, but we're using Webdings. The reason I'm telling you that is what we're ending up doing is we're using these for our matching game. So for instance, I've got the bicycle in there, I've got the airplane in there, I've got the ambulance or whatever that is in there. All right? So we're going to end up using those. All right? The reason that I'm telling you that is the letters that we're going to use, just so you see them on the screen here, are B, that's the bicycle, all right? And we're going to use H, that's the ambulance. Then we're going to use, whoops, I don't know what I did there. Then we're going to use J, that's the airplane. Then we're going to use P, that's the siren or a police car. Then we're going to use T, that's for the train. Then we're going to use a capital L, that's the magnifying glass, a capital N, the eye, and a capital Y. So those are the images that we're going to use. We could have brought in our own images. This is just a simpler way of doing it. All right. We're also going to come in then, and we're going to make all of them 72 for their size and bold. So those are going to be the 8 different images that we're using for the game. Does that make sense? All right. When we first do this, it's going to, for lack of better words, it's going to look weird. Why? Because what we're going to have is the same image in here 16 times. Bear with me, we'll get that fixed in just a couple minutes. What we want to do is each time we play the game, we want those images to go in there randomly. Does that make sense? So in different, we want each image in there twice, but we want them in random positions every single time. So that's what we're going to do. All right, so the first thing I want you to do is to just, in your toolbox, find a label, just double click it, which is going to put a label up in the upper left-hand corner. Everybody see that? So we now have a label up in the upper left-hand corner. And for the first time, we're not even going to name this. This is just going to be the label that's going to hold that picture. We usually name this stuff. We're not going to. All right? But we do want to do a few things here. First thing we want to do is, with that label, highlighted. Make sure that the label is highlighted. So up in your properties window, it should say label 1. All right. First thing we want to do is we want to set the background color. If it's not set, it already should be set to cornflower blue. If it's not, we want to set it to that. All right. Next, we want to go over to this auto size property. Remember, when it's set to true, you can't resize the label, but when it's set to false, you can. So set it from true to false. The next thing we want to do is we want to go down to that dock property that we just saw, and we want to set that to the middle button here, the big button, which is going to say have it take up that entire thing. Now, you may or may not be able to tell that label was this size. That's the size the label was. As of right now, the label is now this size. That's what Doc did. That makes sense? All right, that's what we wanted to do. That's what we just did. We also want this thing to appear in the center, so we'll go down to text align down at the bottom here, where it currently says top left. All right. So we want to go and click the down arrow, and we want to choose the one right in the middle, which means center. Okay, so we want to set that to center. You can see if it worked, your label 1 should now be right there. All right. Couple more things, and then you'll start to see the magic, so to speak. Such as, all right, with that label still highlighted, we want to go over to font here. And we want to click on where it says font. And you see when we do that, we get the ellipsis right here, right? We get that ellipsis, the 3 dots. We want to click those 3 dots, which will bring this up. All right? We want to do 3 things here. The order in which you do these does not matter. The first thing I'm going to do is go down and find Webdings. There it is. Second thing I want to do is set it to bold. There that is. The third thing I want to do is set it to 72. All right? So Webdings, bold, 72, click OK. All right? And you notice right now it looks like that. Don't worry about that. We're going to change that too. All right? But we now have a symbol in there, which is what we want. All right? Let's go in with this still highlighted. Let's go down to the text where it says label 1. Just put a J there, and that'll make it an airplane. Now, to try to make this easier, what I think will be easier, we want it to go and we want to copy this to the other 15 boxes. Does that make sense? So with this highlighted, we're going to do a Control-C to copy. All right. And then we're going to come over here and just literally, come on. However you want to do it. You can Control-V. You know, I'll just do it like that. We want to copy all of these in. So we want, when we get done, there will be 16 airplanes in here. I know these are hard to see on the bottom, but notice they are there. Okay? Now, wouldn't be much of a game right now if we played it like this, would it? You'd win because no matter what you chose, you'd have a match. So we will change that. But for now, that's all fine. Okay? Hopefully you'd agree that now I'm going to do a save here. I'm going to do a save all, and I'm going to run this. Now, hopefully you agree that more or less the interface is built. All right? There's still going to be a couple tweaks that we're going to want to do to it, but like I said, by and large, the interface has been built. All right? So, if your program's running, stop the run. We've already saved. All right? Now, what you might see over here, you might or you might not, is a Solution Explorer and a Team Explorer. See this? If you don't see a Team Explorer, click View and find Team Explorer, which is about the 3rd or 4th one down. That should then bring it and make it available to you. All right? Again, I've already got it here. If you've got the Team Explorer up, look at my Solution Explorer. You see those check marks here? That means those files have all been changed. So from the original, I have made changes to those files. Again, if I want to, I can go back in and I can commit separately. I can commit it totally. I can do whatever it is I want to do. Does that make sense? I can do that any way I want. But I'm going to bring up the Team Explorer. All right? And in the Team Explorer, notice what we have here. It's got a bunch of stuff in here. Boom. Hopefully under these local Git repositories, hopefully you've got one that has the name of your project in it. That's the one that you want to choose. My memory game. You probably have to double click on it. And then you should see this window right here. Now, if you were having problems before and you're not seeing that window, we'll have to work our way around that. Okay? I'm not going to worry about it right now. But notice what we have here. We've got 4 things: changes, branches, sync, and settings. All right? We're going to want to choose changes in a minute. If we wanted to choose a branch, create a new branch, and we'll talk about branches tomorrow, we choose branches right there. All right? If we wanted to sync, so if we wanted to align this with something we had out on GitHub, we would choose sync. If we wanted to play with our external settings or internal settings, we choose settings. We want to choose changes. All right? And it's showing us right here, again, please look on the screen. It's saying right now when you commit, this is what's going to be committed. Right here. It's letting you see that. All right? Do you remember when we committed yesterday? We did this. We typed in git space commit space -m, and then we put some kind of a message there. Everybody remember that? The message is what goes in here. In the yellow box it says enter a commit message. All right? You should always put a message in there. And so I'm going to just put in initial GUI created. Because that's basically what we did, right? We just created the initial graphical user interface. That's what we have. All right? Now, notice under here, we're going to do a commit all in a second, but please look up on the screen. Notice under actions, there's other stuff that we can do. We don't care about that right now. And also notice we can do a commit all, which is what we want to do. All right, we're going to do that in a minute. We want to do a commit all. You can also do a commit all and push, which says not only committed, but then take that and push it out to GitHub or whatever version control system you're using. Push it out to a server. All right? And there's also commit all and sync, which makes sure that the two are in sync with one another. But for now, because we're just working on the client side here, we're going to choose commit all. And you say nothing happened. Yes, it did. You should have a number up there that's probably not the same number as mine. See where it says commit 4D 2D EB0A? That's that number that Git creates for you so that every time you do working with versions, that's the number that will be associated with that version. Right? So what we've done is we just did our first commit. Did anybody have any problems doing that? Were you all able to do that? Did it work for you, Tony? Did it work for you, Jesse? Evan? Matt? Ryan? Andrew? Evan? Okay. All right. It's 9:12. Let's take a break and come back around 9:25, please.